Quite possibly the best week of President Trump's entire career. Could be one of the best weeks of any president in modern history. And you'll never guess who actually finally gave him credit for it. You won't be surprised about who refuses to give him credit. We'll tell you all that coming up in a second. Plus, when there's good news for Donald Trump, that means Scott Jennings has a field day on CNN, and he did, and you'll enjoy it. Also, finally, you know how New York is ready to elect a communist? Well, the media is lining up to make excuses for him and to try to pretend like he's not a communist. Here's the problem. Zohran Mamdani, the aforementioned communist, he's not helping. He's doubling down on the hammer and sickle, and it's hilarious to watch. You're going to see all that and a whole lot more coming up. Now. I'm Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry. Truly a stellar week for President Trump last week, beginning to end, whether it was Iran or whether negotiating the end of a 30-year war in Africa, the economy, Wall Street breaking records, Supreme Court wins. You know who had to finally admit it? CNN. You know who refuses to give him credit for maybe one of his greatest achievements? A Democrat sitting in the Senate right now. You'll see that in a sec. But first, CNN having to admit the impossible. Here we go.
The mission was carried out with stealth and with precision. There were no American casualties. And while Congress is divided after receiving briefings on the extent of the damage, I'm sure that we've derailed Iran's nuclear program, at least temporarily. And there's some valuable deterrent effect for America's adversaries who witnessed last week's exercise. Then, last Tuesday, President Trump left the White House en route to Europe. At the time, there was a question as to whether Israel and Iran would honor a ceasefire. That caused the president to offer the most unfiltered, non-controversial, direct words that I can recall anybody ever saying about the Middle East.
We basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing. Do you understand that?
Cut to The Hague, where he arrived for NATO meetings and was able to wrangle an agreement from our allies to more than double their defense spending target from 2% of gross domestic product to 5% by 2035. Also, while at NATO, in a press availability, he did something rare for Trump and I found rewarding. He showed empathy. It came in an exchange with a Ukrainian journalist who said that her husband was a soldier. She asked whether the U.S. would supply her country with Patriot missiles.
Now, are you living yourself now in Ukraine?
My husband is there.
Wow.
And
I can see you very, it's amazing.
And me with the kids, I'm in Warsaw actually, because he wanted me to be.
Is your husband a soldier? No?
He's
there now. They do want to have the anti-missile missiles, okay, as they call them, the Patriots. And we're going to see if we can make some available. I wish you a lot of luck. I mean, I can see it's very upsetting to you. So say hello to your husband, okay?
Also in that presser, he was more reflective and respectful than usual of our allies.
They want to protect their country, and they need the United States. And without the United States, it's not going to be the same. And I left here differently. I left here saying that these people really love their countries. It's not a ripoff, and we're here to help them protect their country.
Back at home, Trump claimed that he's...
Yeah, we'll get back at home in just a minute. Michael Smerconish, by the way, no friend of Trump, I assure you. He pretends to be a moderate, but he's CNN right down to the marrow. Let's just be clear here. This whole, oh my gosh, I can't believe he's actually showing empathy for people and he's, being generous to European nations. Here's the deal, Smerconish and CNN, as you give this backhanded compliment, but still concede that Trump had the best week of his entire political career, even short of, winning the presidency. It's funny how you can't put two and two together and make sense of the total being four. President Trump demanding that those nations up their military spending beyond just the 2% they had originally promised, which never actually came through, and actually doubling that to 5%. That's not being mean to the European nations. That is compelling them to protect themselves. It's actually an incredibly generous thing to do. It's an incredibly compassionate thing to do because we want those nations to be able to protect themselves. We want them to invest in their own border security, in their own national security to make sure they're not invested. So by putting that demand on them and not letting them sit back and be complacent, lying in a hammock, sipping their Mai Tais and building up their social welfare programs at our expense on the back of our taxpayers, we're actually not only being compassionate to the people who live in this country and pay the bills for Western Europe, but we're actually helping Europe grow up and put on the big boy pants and then actually get to work protecting their own country. So this whole, oh, gee, he's actually showing some compassion and understanding for our European nations and being generous to them in their interests. Yes, he has been all along. The point is they're now on board too. It's about time CNN joined the party. I just wanted to jump in and intercede because there's more of CNN through Michael Smerconish actually acknowledging Trump is on a roll.
Reached a trade deal with China and soon expects the same with India. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick told Bloomberg that the deal was signed earlier this week. China's Commerce Ministry said Friday the two sides had further confirmed the details of the framework. Of course, Trump's initial imposition of tariffs wreaked havoc on American markets back in the spring. But now the markets have rebounded and grown. The S&P 500, NASDAQ hit record highs just yesterday. And it's not just the stock market. Inflation, the great economic fear of recent times, seems to be tamed. The rate is now reported at 2.4%, down from a high of 7% just 4 years ago. Meanwhile, blue-collar workers have seen real wage growth of 1.7% in Trump's first 5 months. This is the largest such increase in nearly 3 generations. Notwithstanding its impact on our national debt, there's also hope among some that Trump's big, beautiful bill will give further financial relief to blue-collar workers, as well as create incentives to build more factories in the U.S. Some already see this happening. For instance, General Electric has just announced that it'll invest almost $500 million in moving production of washing machines from China to Kentucky. And then there's the border. Crossings have slowed to a trickle. According to CBP's May update, Southwest border encounters have fallen to about 282 a day, a drop of 93% from last year and the lowest since the early 1960s. Perhaps the loudest cheering for those border numbers is coming from America's Latino community, which might initially sound counterintuitive. On Thursday, Pew Research released an enormous data analysis of the 2024 election, which contained several surprises. High on that list, President Trump won a bigger percentage of the Latino vote than previously believed. Hillary Clinton had a 38% lead over Trump among Hispanics in 2016. Joe Biden beat Trump in this demo by 25 percentage points. Kamala Harris's margin among these same voters over Trump, just 3 points. Even more surprising, perhaps, Pew Research concludes that if everyone had voted in 2024, contrary to the widely held belief that higher turnout helps Democrats, Trump would still have won.
I love the fact that all of this is framed within counterintuitive. What do you mean counterintuitive? First of all, you're in the journalism business. You're in the news business. You're not supposed to be reporting on things that are intuitive. You're supposed to just deal in facts. But of course, for the last 8 to 10 years, all you've heard from these people is intuitive. My feelings. I think this, I think that. They're so locked in to their racial bias that they believe that protecting the border would hurt somebody with Latino voters because in their, well, frankly, racist perspective, because your skin is a certain color or because your nation of origin comes from south of the border, you're suddenly going to embrace lawlessness. That if you're in the country and you came here legally, you're still going to give a pass to people who look like you or maybe speak your language if they come and break the law and come into the country the same way that you did, except that you followed the law. Think of it this way. Would anybody sitting in a CNN newsroom say that it's counterintuitive for somebody who's paying full price for groceries at a store for that person to then be angry if someone who has the same skin color as they do and the same speaks the same language as they do, if they walk in and steal and shoplift everything that you just paid full price for at the grocery store, right? I mean, that's really what they're saying here. Hey, listen, I know that you paid full price for your basket full of groceries, and this person just shoplifted everything. But let's face it, you guys have the same skin color and you have the same ethnicity, so you should give them a pass, right? They think that because a Latino is a Latino, they're going to suddenly be okay with lawlessness and people breaking the laws. And also, let's not forget, those people who came into the country illegally, especially the criminals, they end up living in those very same neighborhoods, generally speaking, with other Latinos and wreak havoc on them. You have to be a Michael Smerconish. You have to be a CNN journalist. You have to have an advanced degree from a liberal arts college on the East Coast in the United States of America to think that racially, to think that biased and racist, basically, and immorally, amorally, to believe that. But now, he's delivering the facts. He's saying, hey, things are actually pretty good for Trump. And it's all counterintuitive because it blasts away the racial prism that we, white liberals, look at everything through. He still doesn't quite get it, but it's actually phenomenal to see this report. There's more to it. Just wait. You see the Chiron. Do you know how much it pained them to have to do this? Of course, it was only for a weekend show. You'll never see this in primetime on CNN, but at least they did it.
The data show 44% of non-voters said that they would have gone for Trump compared to 40% of non-voters who would have gone for Harris. So if more had voted, his margin would have grown. Yesterday came a huge decision from the Supreme Court. The High Court declared that federal district judges exceeded their authority when issuing nationwide injunctions against Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. This will, of course, strengthen executive power both for Trump and for his successors. And finally, a Democratic socialist just won the nomination for mayor of New York City. And perhaps you're wondering, well, how does that affect Trump? It gives him the perfect foil, someone to play off in future political battles. This morning's New York Post references campaign literature for Zohran Mamdani, which advocates for increased taxation for, quote, richer and whiter neighborhoods. Just imagine what Trump will do with that. Winning became a punchline that Trump's opponents used to lampoon him in his first administration. He was a political novice then, surrounded by a team with which he was unfamiliar, and he was probably as surprised as the rest of us were that he won the election. This time is different. This time he came with a plan and a cabinet with senior advisors comprised of loyalists all well known to the president. And recently, he's exhibited a more layered approach to governing on both the domestic and international front, no longer solely guided by winning each day's news cycle. By any objective measure, President Trump has his opponents on the run.
Yeah, and one final addendum that Zohran Mamdani line that he did, where he's like, "Oh, he's the perfect foil for Donald Trump," as if Trump is going to set Zohran up as some sort of straw man, to erroneously suggest that he represents the mainstream of the Democrat Party. Well, a little later in the show, we'll show you exactly how he does, in fact, represent the power base of the Democrat Party. But it's where guys like, oh, he's the perfect foil for Trump. Dude, it's the Democrats who propped him up. Trump's not setting him up like a straw man. Democrats literally just nominated him to be their candidate as mayor of the largest city in America. Trump didn't do that, pal. Y'all did that. So God forbid Trump actually point out reality to everybody and say, hey, guys, look what the Democrats are doing. Look who they're rallying behind. Look what they believe. That said, a beautiful litany there from Smerconish over there on CNN, where they have to concede Trump is succeeding at every level. The economy, you saw, the market breaking records. Tariffs seem to have worked because we've got manufacturing coming back to America and Wall Street continues to thrive as inflation goes down. It's almost like Trump's economic plan that he told you he would implement during the campaign and has implemented in the first 5 months of his presidency is working. It's almost like all you geniuses in the media were wrong. You see, that's the other part of this story that Mr. Smerconish and CNN can't bring themselves to broadcast. Nice work, credit where it's due. They actually laid out exactly what has happened in this country thanks to President Trump's policies and his plans. And they have admitted that they're working and Trump is in a great place right now. What's left unsaid is that you were all wrong, deadly wrong, horribly wrong across the board. Now, you heard the numbers about the border, and we've been explaining this to you for the last week or two, where the numbers are extraordinary. I mean, literally 0 releases into this country in the month of May of people who are encountered illegally crossing, like literally 0. Absolutely breathtaking. So you would think at the very least, even if you didn't like Trump and you ran against him and you're in the opposing political party, at the very least, even if you're just dragged kicking and screaming, you've got to concede, yeah, I mean, like it or not, he has actually locked down the border. You got to give him credit for that, right? Right? Wrong. Chris Murphy, Democrat senator from Connecticut, and he's running for president. You can tell because he's grown a beard to look manly. He refuses to give Trump credit for locking down the border. In fact, well, watch the reason why.
Border crossings are at a record low. Do you give the Trump administration some credit for that? And are you, when you look at those figures, do you think things are moving in the right direction, at least in that regard, Senator?
No, I don't give them credit for that because border crossings are low because they're violating the law every day. So we have a law in this country that says if you are fleeing terror or torture from another country, you can come here and apply for asylum. The Trump administration has suspended that law. They are not allowing anybody to come here to apply for asylum. We wrote that bipartisan bill last year to reform the asylum process, to make sure that only the right people are coming in and that we judge those cases expeditiously at the border. So it's true, there are very few people crossing on a daily basis, but that's because the Trump administration is violating the law. And it should matter to every American that on so many facets, the Trump administration doesn't care about the law. This is becoming a lawless administration. We are on a road to see our democracy atrophy to the point that it will be unrecognizable. And the border is just one example of many ways in which this administration doesn't care about the law anymore.
First of all, you need to understand that the message that voters just heard from this guy who wants to be your president is vote for me and I'll reverse everything and we'll have open borders again. So thanks, Chris, for being honest about that, number one. Number two, he's rooting against this country. He's rooting against actually securing our border. But he suggested it's because Trump, by locking down the border and closing the border, he's violating the law. He kept saying it over and over again. Oh, well, they're violating the law. A couple of things on that. First of all, you know what you should do, Chris? You know what you should do, Democrats, if you think that Trump is violating the law? What you should do is sue and then find a circuit court judge somewhere, or a district court judge, I should say, have them put in a temporary injunction that locks down the policy across the board nationwide, and then fight that all the way to the Supreme Court so you can prove that Trump is violating the law. That's what you should do. Oh, wait, that is what you've done. And you've lost because he's not violating the law. But there's something even more deceptive about what you just saw. Let's watch it together, shall we? And I'll break down how this man is lying to you, and he lied through his teeth. And that woman, pretty in pink, Kristen Welker there, the journalist who's supposed to be conducting this interview, she let him lie. She either is ignorant or she's complacent. Probably both. But if I were conducting this interview, here's what I'd say.
Are at a record low. Do you give the Trump administration some credit for that? And are you, when you look at those figures, do you think things are moving in the right direction, at least in that regard, Senator?
No, I don't give them credit for that because border crossings are low because they're violating the law every day. So we have a law in this country that says if you are fleeing terror or torture from another country, you can come here and apply for asylum.
Hold on. That's not true, actually. We have a law that says if you're fleeing torture or terror, you can apply for asylum. The come here part, that's not in the law. You can apply for asylum in your home country. You can apply for your asylum in Mexico, right across the border from us, if you make it that far. You can apply for asylum at the U.S. Embassy in the country you're coming from or in a neighboring country. The come here part, not in the law, Senator Murphy. Now, it's true if you do find yourself here, if you enter illegally and then claim asylum, sure, we can entertain that. But if you break the law coming here, we have every right to send you back on the other side of the border, and then we'll hear your asylum claim, number one. Number two, Senator Murphy, you know as well as anybody else, of the 20 million people who crossed the border during the Biden administration for the last 4 years, what percentage of them actually had legitimate claims for asylum? You know perfectly well that people are violating and exploiting the loophole that you set up to help people who are actually fleeing terror and torture in their home countries. They're just coming here to get good jobs, and you know that. Anyways, go ahead. Continue your thought, please, because here's the biggest deception of all. Listen to how he does this.
The Trump administration has suspended that law. They are not allowing anybody to come here to apply for asylum. We wrote that bipartisan bill last year to reform the asylum process, to make sure that only the right people are coming in and that we judge those cases expeditiously at the border. So it's true, there are very few people crossing on a daily basis, but that's because the Trump administration is violating the law. And
right there. Did you hear what he said? We wrote that bipartisan bill to make sure that we can have these asylum cases heard, and Trump is violating the law. That bill he referred to, it never got voted on, let alone passed. So what, you wrote a bill? It doesn't matter. That bill is as worthless as this piece of paper. It never made it anywhere. So what, you wrote a bill? You literally never even had a vote on it in the Senate, let alone the House, and it never made it to any president's desk to sign into law. So he just represented that they passed some bipartisan bill that would reinforce asylum and border security, and now Trump is violating the law. Listen to the language he used. It's such a lie.
To apply for asylum. We wrote that bipartisan bill last year to reform the asylum process, to make sure that only the right people are coming in and that we judge those cases expeditiously at the border. So it's true, there are very few people crossing on a daily basis, but that's because the Trump administration is violating the law. And
Did you hear how he did that? We wrote this bill, and Trump's violating the law. The bill never became law. Trump's violating nothing. Trust me. If he were violating the law, they'd have every judge in the world trying to stop him from doing so. They've tried, but they've lost. And that was the moment when Kristen Welker could jump in and actually help inform their viewers. But sadly, Meet the Press viewers, they're woefully uninformed. So there you go. Chris Murphy won't give him any credit for doing the fundamentals of what you would expect an executive branch of our American government to do, and that is secure our borders. It's kind of fundamental to a nation, isn't it? Murphy, the Democrat, won't give him credit. But you know who will? Real people. Real people are getting it. Take a look at this guy who did a selfie video about what his life is like now that ICE is doing their job deporting illegal immigrants who are exploiting the good nature of this country, and also after they've secured the border. Chris Murphy of Connecticut, living in his fancy neighborhood, might not get it, but this guy right here, he gets it.
In 1 week, I have seen in my city black men power washing parking lots, black men doing roofing work, black men doing lawn services around businesses in my city. Things are starting to look like the old days again. Black Man Thoughts 2.0, and I'm out. Peace.
Love that. And I love it with the American flags waving in the corner there, right? Oh, these are jobs that Americans won't do. No, these are jobs that Americans will do, but for a fair wage and without being exploited and without being undermined by people in this country illegally. That includes this gentleman and other people in his neighborhood, in his community, who are more than happy to be working. Exactly what Trump promised would happen. Something is shifting here. We've seen it specifically in the African American community and with the black vote, not only embracing Trump's approach here and respecting hard work and an ethic that actually supports and celebrates people in this country of all races and economic stratas, but we're seeing something else go on here. People in this country, especially in the inner city and in the African American community, they're sick and tired of the white liberal left-wing dirtbags who are ruining their cities with their riots and with their vandalism and with their Antifa behavior. We saw it in, of all places, Portland, Oregon, the epicenter of Antifa, the epicenter of white dirtbag kids who have their Bachelor's of Arts degrees and have learned two things: how to make an espresso at Starbucks and how to don black armor and destroy a city. And night after night after night, they have sieged downtown Portland, blasting music in their little camp where they're trying to take over the town. And last night, one woman who lives in the city of Portland, she'd had enough. Take a look. And you wonder to yourself as you watch this, whose side is she on? Who is she going to vote for next chance she has?
You have that video?
I will turn it down. I would love to. You just have to ask nice, and I'm being nice even though you're screaming at me. Fuck you! I'm going back every night and I'm destroying and wrecking your shit! Turn it down! We the people need sleep! I've been out here 2 days straight protecting your dogs, baby. You heard what I said, bitch! Talking to us calmly would be a hell of a lot better than... Go fuck yourself! Colonize your fucking ass, bitch! Go fuck yourself, bro. I don't give a fuck. Stick that cane up your ass. Come on, I'm ready to go! The first domino falls. Fuck you! You know what happens? Jail! You know what happens when the first domino falls? Jail! Don't get it out! I'm telling you to shut the fuck up! Hey, I'm sleeping! Hey guys, let's let another neighbor talk. Let's let another neighbor talk.
And then they end up mocking her. See, this is an encampment in downtown Portland, and you saw it's populated by all, 23, 24-year-old white dudes and white chicks, a couple of Asian. I saw an Asian chick in there. I'm sure they all have their, degrees in anthropology or creative writing. They're all dressed in their black armor and their masks, and they've got an encampment going with music blaring all night long as they smoke weed and fight the man. And this woman, inner city, blue collar, working class, trying to get some sleep, saying, shut up, turn off your music. I got to work tomorrow. And they're going after her, and they're mocking her, and they're attacking her because she's the problem. And they're the ones who will say that we're the diverse ones. We're all about inclusivity. We're all, we'll fight the racial power, man. We're the right. And you see what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Things are starting to turn in this country. Real people get it. Real people see what this president is doing. Real people see the difference that he's making. Real, everyday, ordinary Americans, even CNN, see that Trump is kicking butt. You know how here we often make the comment that people who work in the news business very rarely watch the news or have a good understanding of what the news of the world is? Imagine if you actually sit on a panel at CNN and have to debate current affairs, and the person next to you literally doesn't know what just happened in the news. That's what happened with Scott Jennings. And he absolutely called this woman out, lampooned her, mocked her, and suggested that, while you're working here at CNN, you might want to watch the news now and again. It's an epic moment, and I want to show it to you. It'll come in a sec. But first, there's too much Scott Jennings to show you right now. So let's get started with it. Jennings detailed the week that Donald Trump had, and you'll see he's in a pretty confident space right now on Abby Phillips' show.
And he knows that the lower courts cannot carte blanche stop him, which hugely increases the power of the executive.
Yeah, look, this is a great week for him, not just because of this ruling, but earlier in the week, the Supreme Court handed him the ruling on being able to deport illegal immigrants to third-party countries, essentially. So he's on a little bit of a winning streak in the courts right now. And what a lot of Republicans are saying is, nope, we're not tired of winning yet. This happened. The stock market's at a record high. He brokered the ceasefire in the 12-day war. Peace broke out between Rwanda and the Congo. I mean, gas prices are at a 4-year low for the summer. I mean, win after win after win. And this particular one is the most important because these individual judges had been, I think, unfairly stopping the president from governing. He won the election. They did. We don't have 600 presidents. We have one president. And now he's going to be able to actually govern. And so you could make an argument that this week or the last 2 weeks, the best week or 2 weeks of his entire presidency.
I agree. And as I said earlier, quite possibly the best week for any president in modern history, considering the catalog of successes he had. My favorite part of this whole clip, though, as you saw the camera shots of everyone else at the panel, this is perfectly indicative. Look at his face. You see, this is bad news for these people. And understand something. As Scott Jennings was detailing the litany of successes for the Trump presidency, most of those successes, objectively speaking, are successes for all of us. You know, the economy is strong. Inflation is down. Unemployment is steady. The economy is booming. The stock market, S&P 500, had its greatest week ever. And that is including the first week of April, where it cratered because of the initial sort of false reaction over the tariff announcements. We're now just in the last week of June, and it is already bounced back to the point where it's breaking records. That's good news for people. Remember when everyone was screaming, look at your 401k, Trump is ruining the economy and ruining your retirement. If that's all you care about, you're a happy man right now. And that makes them upset. They're angry. They're depressed. They're sad. Things are good for you right now. They don't like it. This is CNN. So a little later this weekend, they had a conversation about the economy and how strong it is. And CNN attempted to contextualize this. Oh, sure. Some of the data might look good, but let me explain to you exactly how the economy isn't good. They're bending over backwards here to crap all over this nation. That's what they do.
Scott offered one explanation for the highs in the stock market. There are other explanations. Here's one from Jason Furman, an economist. The macroeconomy is doing decently. He said, especially when it comes to tariffs, the market is now more confident that Trump will back off if necessary. He added, in April, I think the fear was that he would just plow ahead no matter what. Now there is a sense that there are realities that he won't try to blow past.
Exactly.
It's hard to argue, Scott, that that's not accurate when just this week, today, they're saying, oh, that 90-day deadline, we're just going to push it back out another 90 days. So the market's basically saying, oh, okay, they're just going to push it back.
Well, whatever it takes to say Donald Trump is wrong. I guess that's what people will do.
Well, no,
even today.
But genuinely, maybe you could argue that this is a negotiating tactic that is working fine. But the truth is, Trump is in fact backing down, and the markets have calmed because of that.
Yeah, he's doing what he thinks he needs to do with individual situations. And look also what's happening with individual companies. We had reshoring announcements this week. General Electric in my home state of Kentucky decided to reshore a bunch of jobs. The CEO of General Electric said the current policy environment is why we're doing it. So they're bringing a whole bunch of jobs from overseas back to the United States. You have announcement after announcement after announcement on top of these great gains in the market. Look, maybe sometimes the answer is, hey, maybe it's working. Maybe it's working.
But it's not.
But if you tell me you're going to do 10 things and you do one of them and you keep claiming victory and the other 9 are just coming down
the economy are you unhappy about today?
Me personally, because I could easily go into the
what about the market?
Bigger picture problem here.
Well, wait a minute. The market. Hold on one second. Just on the market. Wait a minute. When the market was plummeting, the market didn't matter. But today the market is good, so now it matters. And this is the double talk we're talking about. It's like the reason why people are hesitant to be like, yes, this is good, Donald Trump, because y'all don't do it either. People are not being honest brokers on these things. People who voted for Donald Trump as working class Americans are still struggling today as they were on November 5th. That is a fact. So they don't care that those arrows on that paper are green. Just like you told me they didn't care when those arrows were red.
Look, we have low gas prices right now. We have jobs coming back to the United States. We have inflation rates slowing.
You sound like me on November 4th.
I mean, we have a lot of
and that was the day before the election,
we have a
and
lot
we lost.
Of positive green shoots in the economy, and you don't seem to want to acknowledge it. It's kind of working.
That's right. It is working, and he's 100% right. Gas prices are at a 4-year low right now. When she's like, oh, you sound like me on election day. No, actually, you couldn't say On election day of 2024, the gas prices were at a 4-year low. They were still skyrocketing. It's President Trump's policies of domestic drilling and his policies in bringing calm to the Middle East that's actually brought those prices low. Every data point and every fact works against them right now. But they're just trying to make a political point to try to attack Donald Trump in any way they possibly can. Facts be damned. When that woman says that working class men and women are struggling just as much now as they ever have been, it is a lie. By every measure, it is a lie. You don't like looking at the market and how it's going to affect your retirement? Okay, that's fine. I'm just playing that game because that's the game y'all were playing just a couple of months ago. How about grocery store prices? Improved. Gas prices? Improved. Cost of living? Improved. Inflation? Improved. Wages? Improved. Employment? Improved. Consumer confidence? Improved. Plus, you say, oh, well, he's just backing down on the tariffs. He's backing down on the tariffs. He's not actually doing anything with the tariffs. First of all, they have always said and always maintained that the tariffs are a weapon to use if negotiations go bad. They are something to threaten if these countries don't want to negotiate a better deal. They will be implemented to cause harm to these other countries if they don't come to the table to negotiate. By definition, if you're negotiating and you hold out a threat and then the other party comes and they negotiate with you, you remove that threat. That's not backing down. That's negotiating, number one. But number two, GE bringing their washer and dryer appliance manufacturing to Kentucky for $500 million is a perfect example of the tariff policies being implemented or even being threatened, affecting the way corporations are going to decide to make their long-term business decisions. Does anyone on that moronic panel, save Scott Jennings, or anyone in this country believe that GE would have brought that manufacturing to Kentucky if Kamala Harris were president? That's all you got to ask yourself. All that money, all that manufacturing, all those jobs coming into Kentucky, would they have happened were Kamala Harris our president of the United States? The answer is obvious on the face of it. But see, the problem is I'm trying to have this conversation, as is Mr. Jennings, with people that you assume actually have a head on their shoulders. They can look at the facts on the table and come up with a logical conclusion where A leads to B and equals C. But that's not the case all the time on these panels, as Mr. Jennings discovered. Here is a fascinating conversation about the 30-year war between Rwanda and Congo reaching a peace settlement last week at the White House. Did you see this, by the way, very much in the mainstream media? Did you see the New York Times or the Washington Post do a lot of deep dive analysis? Did you see broadcast news on the Sunday shows spending much time? A 30-year war that included the Rwandan genocide civil war that led to then the expanded war with the Congo Republic comes to an end. The parties praised Donald Trump and Marco Rubio. In fact, specifically said, we tried to get Biden and Jake Sullivan and Antony Blinken engaged and involved in this, and they ignored us. Trump stepped up on day one, and here we are with a peaceful resolution to this 30-year war. Did you see the media cover that much? If not, why not? I'll tell you, they're racist. They don't care. That they're really upset about this war between Ukraine and Russia that's 3 years old, and it's all Biden's fault. And I get that. I mean, that's a big deal. Russia, Ukraine, Eastern Europe, I get it. This war is 30 years old. But of course, the casualties are Africans, so they don't care. Trump cared. But then when the subject of this peace deal made it to the Scott Jennings panel this weekend, this will blow your mind. This will blow your mind.
Jobs not done. A foreign minister from Rwanda has told CNN, he said he's committed to supporting this ongoing negotiation, but warned that ending the conflict will depend on political will and the good faith. And he doesn't know if that is true, referring to the DRC's government. It's not done. It's not done.
You didn't watch the news yesterday. They literally announced it in the Oval Office.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. This is indeed a historical day. because it's the signing of a peace agreement between Congo and Rwanda to end a conflict that has been going on for 30 years.
Let me ask you a question.
Literally in the Oval
Can I say
Office
something?
Friday afternoon.
You said something earlier. You said, and you kind of agree with Pete when he says there's something about the media where they feel like they want to disprove Donald Trump. Is that what you said? Something to that
Yeah,
effect?
it happens every day.
And you think that's what they want to do, right? You think the
Yes.
media is going in to say he's lying and he's not telling the truth. Do you
Correct.
believe that?
That is the
wholeheartedly?
standing disposition.
Do you believe that he tells the truth?
Yeah, I do.
Every time.
You think
all presidents do
you
that?
think the
All
president
presidents?
tells the truth? This current president tells the truth often.
Yeah, I do.
Okay. I also think that to our point that we haven't established, he does announce things before it's too soon.
They literally had the
program is
countries
not
in there.
The program isn't.
I feel like you should watch the news before you come out here.
I feel like you should stop trying to defend him just
Hang
to
on.
defend
I feel like
him.
you should watch
I
the
think
news.
you should stop.
Did you catch that in the crosstalk there? I feel like you should watch the news before you come out here. You realize this is a news network. While you're sitting in the green room or getting your makeup on, you could actually be watching the news. I mean, they literally just had the peace agreement. They literally had both parties in the Oval Office. They sat down with the Secretary of State and signed the treaty. It's like happened. Will it last? Maybe not. I don't know. That's typical of peace treaties, isn't it? But she's like, no, it didn't happen. It just didn't happen. That you have to submit yourself into a state of cognitive disbelief, I guess, to make your way through the liberal left perspective in America right now as Trump succeeds. You've just got to put yourself into a state of denial and just say, no, that didn't happen. No, that didn't happen. It's not possible. It didn't happen. The only way he secured the border is by breaking the law. But wait, securing the border is literally the law. I mean, you're supposed to secure the border. It was Biden who ignored the law. And you know what I'm saying? It's like the only way you can make yourself get through the day because you hate Trump so much is to just lie to yourself like that woman just did before our very eyes. Amazing. And then there's this, as we know, Zohran Mamdani, the communist nominee for the Democrats as mayor of New York, has specifically put out a campaign position paper. It's on his campaign letterhead saying that he will raise the taxes on white neighborhoods. On what he describes these neighborhoods based on the racial makeup of the residents. And he says, those are the ones we're going to raise taxes on. That's a fact. That's the news. In fact, Mamdani doubled down on it and affirmed it. We'll play that for you coming up in a little bit. But that's the fact. And now Jennings has to show up on a panel to discuss this. And his counterparts literally deny the truth. They're denying the fact. I mean, what are you going to do?
I got to leave it there. Nobody's going to be able to walk Manhattan after he defunds the New York City Police Department, Marie. I wouldn't advise walking Manhattan after he gets rid of the police force.
Just to jump in, Mamdani. Hold on. Mamdani advocated for defunding NYPD in 2020. He's since said his goal is reform, not defunding.
Exactly.
And then also just
you guys are doing that again. It's the old Harris playbook.
Just one more thing. Point of order. He just said he didn't want to tax white people specifically, just higher income neighborhoods that do happen to be majority white.
He literally wrote it in his statement, Omar. He literally wrote it down. Are you letting him get also
white? No, I am saying that he said that, but not on the basis of race specifically. I'm not saying he didn't say that. He did say that,
okay,
but
I
not
think
on the
you need to
basis
reread
of race specifically.
He's not raising taxes on white people. He's raising taxes on the people who live in predominantly white neighborhoods. Okay, so what makes the neighborhood a predominantly white neighborhood? Well, the people who live there are predominantly white. I see. So this is a neighborhood with predominantly white people. The people in those neighborhoods are predominantly white. Yes, that's correct. Therefore, it's a white neighborhood. Yes, that's correct. And he's going to raise the taxes on the people who live in that neighborhood. Yes, that's correct. So he's raising taxes on white people. No! No! Can't be. Can't be. I don't know whether Scott Jennings is enjoying his life as much as we're enjoying watching him right now, but I sure hope he is. And he sure seems like he is, because they just make his job so easy every single day, and we're here for it. You know, when communists take over countries, one thing happens with the people who are in the media, the journalists, the reporters. You either become part of the resistance, you go underground, you fear for your life, but you try your damnedest to tell the truth and fight this new power that has taken over these totalitarian communist authoritarians. Or you become one of the useful idiots. You end up making sure that you're on the side of the totalitarians, that you do their bidding, that you bend over backwards to make sure that the way is clear for them to take over, because you want to be one of the chosen people who end up continuing to be sitting behind that desk and spewing propaganda. You'll never guess how our media reacted this weekend with their brand new favorite candidate, the communist, running for mayor in New York. Well, we'll give you a little taste of it right now. Kristen Welker on Meet the Press. Watch her bend over backwards to try to help this guy out. She wasn't alone, by the way. We've got a whole host of these media personalities who are dead set against telling you the truth, who are doing whatever they can to make sure that Mamdani here is in some way welcomed as the liberator that we've all needed. Watch them debase themselves for the hope that they stay on his good side as he becomes their fearless leader.
You were recently asked about the term globalize the intifada, if it makes you uncomfortable. In that moment, you did not condemn the phrase. Now, just so folks understand, it's a phrase that many people hear as a call to violence against Jews. There's been a lot of attention on this issue. So I want to give you an opportunity to respond here and now. Do you condemn that phrase, globalize the intifada?
That's not language that I use. The language that I use and the language that I will continue to use to lead this city is that which speaks clearly to my intent, which is an intent grounded in a belief in universal human rights. And ultimately, that's what is the foundation of so much of my politics, the belief that freedom and justice and safety are things that, to have meaning, have to be applied to all people, and that includes Israelis and Palestinians alike.
But do you actually condemn it? I think that's the question and the outstanding issue that a number of people, both of the Jewish faith and beyond, have. Do you condemn that phase, globalize the intifada, which a lot of people hear as a call to violence against Jews?
I've heard from many Jewish New Yorkers who have shared their concerns with me, especially in light of the horrific attacks that we saw in Washington, D.C. and in Boulder, Colorado, about this moment of anti-Semitism in our country and in our city. And I've heard those fears and I've had those conversations, and ultimately they are part and parcel of why in my campaign I've put forward a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. I don't believe that the role of the mayor is to police speech in the manner especially of that of Donald Trump, who has put one New Yorker in jail who's just returned to his family, Mahmoud Khalil, for that very supposed crime of speech. Ultimately, what I think I need to show is the ability to not only talk about something, but to tackle it and to make clear that there's no room for anti-Semitism in this city. We have to root out that bigotry, and ultimately we do that through the actions, and that is the mayor I will be, one that protects Jewish New Yorkers and lives up to that commitment through the work that I do.
This guy is such a fraud, and by the way, the media is celebrating him right now because he's so good at being a fraud. They really, you will literally see people in the media saying, like, he's so good at avoiding the question. He's really good at dancing around. What do you mean? Your job is to hold his feet to the fire. And Kristen Welker, I guess, attempts one more time here. It's a pretty clear-cut question, and it's a yes or no answer. Do you condemn the use of the term globalize the intifada? Intifada is violence. Intifada is the violent resistance to the Israeli government that manifests in Molotov cocktails, suicide bombers, and really the slaughter that led to October 7th. October 7th is exactly what the intifada looks like. Globalize the intifada means that it's in our neighborhoods next, just like we saw in Boulder, Colorado. It should be a pretty simple thing to say. Yeah, no, I condemn people who are chanting globalize the intifada, but he can't. He can't possibly do that. And so he spews a bunch of bullshit instead of just answering the question straight. And so Kristen Welker, one more time here, as she apologizes almost for having to press the issue.
People quickly, for the people who care about the language and who feel really concerned by that phrase, why not just condemn it?
My concern is to start to walk down the line of language and making clear what language I believe is permissible or impermissible takes me into a place similar to that of the president who is looking to do those very kinds of things, putting people in jail for writing an op-ed, putting them in jail for protesting. Ultimately, it's not language that I use. It's language I understand there are concerns about. And what I will do is showcase my vision for the city through my words and my actions.
Interesting. So he doesn't want to police language. Of course, I would follow up and say, so if a man dresses as a woman and comes to a workplace in New York City and somebody refers to that man dressed as a woman as a man, would that be okay? Would there be any ordinances against that sort of thing? I'm just curious. I know that you don't want to police speech, so let's just be clear here. I think we all know the answer to that question. Then fast forward over to Jake Tapper, who had Eric Adams on, and Eric Adams is like, this guy is celebrating and glorifying Hamas, which he has done in the past. He wears their costuming, the keffiyeh, all the time. He marches with those who are celebrating Hamas and chanting globalizing intifada. He's right there participating in those marches. He's celebrating, as you just saw, Mahmoud Khalil, who participated in the Columbia siege, the illegal encampment in Columbia University that chanted "From the river to the sea," which is the Hamas slogan for wiping out the Jewish state. And anybody who's paying attention knows that this guy has celebrated those who have carried out the October 7th massacre. Eric Adams points that out. And here's Jake Tapper, good old reliable, once again, dutifully doing his job for the left.
Oh, I want to turn to your likely Democratic challenger, Mamdani, because you said recently that the Jewish community in New York should be concerned about him. You've accused him of using anti-Semitic rhetoric. What specifically has Mamdani said that you think is anti-Semitic?
Pro-Hamas. Hamas is a dangerous terrorist organization that should be destroyed. When you embrace the philosophies of Hamas, not only what they do to their own people, but what they did in Gaza to lift them up and praise them, I think that's a clear indicator that something is wrong with that. But he has to
when did he praise Hamas? I don't recall him ever praising Hamas.
There's several videos, even during his days of being a rap artist, of praising Hamas and other terrorist groups. And so a little research, you'll be able to find it. But I'm not competing against him only for what he's done and praising Hamas. I'm competing against him because this is not a socialist city. And that much of what he's promising to people, which I think is really deplorable, people that are struggling, like my family did, living without the means that we needed, when you promise them that you're going to give everything away free and you don't have the authority as the mayor to do so, he doesn't have the authority to raise income tax on the top 1% of New Yorkers. Assemblymen have that authority, and that's who he is. He couldn't do it in the assembly. How are you going to deliver it as the mayor of the city?
Well, he has. I mean, he obviously caught the imagination of a lot of Democratic voters. His victory was pretty handy. You're talking about rent freezes, which he does have the power to do. Free bus service, universal childcare, creating city-run grocery stores. Do you disagree with those programs, or just he doesn't have the authority to do it on his own?
Let's go back. You said rent freeze. He has the authority to do so. No, he does not. There's the independent rent guideline boards that independently make that decision. So he does not have the authority to do that. He had the authority to do free buses. I gave him a pilot project to do when he was in the assembly. He failed to carry out on it. 4 years in the assembly, he has not passed one bill. He's making promises to people who are really struggling that he can't deliver on. The foundation of all the things he wants to do for free is coming from an income tax increase on 1%. He does not have the authority as the mayor to do that. He has the authority as an assemblyman, and he did not accomplish everything he's talking about doing now. He could have done in the state, but he failed to do so.
Eric Adams looking better and better, by the way, I have to say, and he makes a very compelling argument. The mayor doesn't have the power to do all these things that he's promising to do, but he did when he was an assemblyman, and he never did any of it. He never even tried to do any of it. But did you notice how Jake Tapper was like, I don't think he's ever praised Hamas. He's never celebrated. He's not. Again, he marches in all of the marches. The day after October 7th, he put out a statement calling for the Palestinians to have a free and independent state. In other words, let's give the Hamas terrorists exactly what they demand after they've slaughtered 1,000 people. So, I mean, maybe that's not celebrating Hamas, but it's certainly acquiescing and going in league with Hamas to demand from Israel and the world exactly what they just slaughtered over 1,000 people in the name for. But okay, fine. Let's really dive deep into this. Did Zohran Mamdani celebrate and praise Hamas? Well, yeah, he did. There's an organization called the Canary Mission. They look for anti-Semitism and pro-violent terrorist commentary and statements out there, and they found this rapper named Zohran Mamdani. Only 8 years ago, he was a rapper, hip-hop artist, and in this song, he actually has a lyric that praises a group called the Holy Land Five. Here, listen.
In 2017, Zohran Mamdani released a rap track that praised 5 convicted Hamas funders known as the Holy Land Five. Now he wants to run New York? Mamdani says, look him up. So we did. These 5 men were convicted of funneling over $12 million to Hamas, a U.S. designated terrorist organization responsible for the murder, rape, and kidnapping of civilians, including Americans. Mamdani sent his love to convicted Hamas funders. Let that sink in. Mamdani says, no wall will make it fall. That's an open door for criminals and chaos. Zohran Mamdani stands with convicted terrorist funders and wants open borders. This is New York City, not a sanctuary for terrorists. Zohran Mamdani, unfit, un-American, unthinkable.
Yeah, great work by those guys. You know how bad it is right now with this guy. So here's Jake Tapper and Kristen Welker just trying. Oh, Kristen Welker's like, please, just come on, help me out here. Just condemn, globalize the Intifada. Just say it, damn it. Jake Tapper, I don't think he's ever said anything nice about Hamas. I don't think he's on Hamas's side, to be honest with you. I think you got that wrong, Eric Adams. They're doing their best. They're trying their hardest. But you know who's not on board? This guy, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader for the Democrats. He's forced now to say, well, are you on this guy's side? I mean, he's a New Yorker, by the way. Hakeem Jeffries' district is in New York. So this guy's going to be his mayor. So Jeffries had his big chance here this Sunday. It should be simple, right? Well, listen, I'm the top Democrat in Washington, D.C. This guy's the nominee. I may not have been on his side during the primary, but sure, I'll coalesce around our candidate. Couldn't bring himself to it. And the excuse? Oh, watch how he tries to weasel out of this.
We had a conversation on Wednesday morning where I congratulated him on the campaign that he ran, a campaign that clearly was relentlessly focused on the high cost of living in New York City and the economy. He outworked, he out-communicated, and he out-organized the opposition, and that's clearly why he was successful.
So what's holding you back from endorsing him right now?
Well, we don't really know each other well. Our districts don't overlap. I have never had a substantive conversation with him. And so that's the next step in terms of this process, to be able to sit down, which we agreed to do in central Brooklyn, discuss his vision for moving the city forward and addressing the issues that are important to the communities that I represent, a very diverse district that I represent in Brooklyn, including many African Americans, many Jewish Americans, many Caribbean Americans who are dealing with a lot of challenges in the city and want to make sure that the next mayor of the city of New York, whoever that may be, is prepared to tackle them.
Wow, well, I haven't really met him. I got to get to know him. I by the way, I'm calling bullshit on that one. I'm pretty sure he has met him. No, I'm not going to endorse that. We have to have a meeting. I want to talk. Well, the fact of the matter is, people in the African American community in New York, as well as lower income individuals in New York, did not vote for this guy. They didn't like this guy. It was the rich, elitist, multiple degreed New Yorkers who feel good about themselves for voting for him. That's where the base is. I would bet that Hakeem Jeffries, sort of middle to lower income strata in Brooklyn, they're not on board with this guy at all. And Jeffries understands the politics of this. He doesn't want to be on the wrong side of it. That's why Eric Adams has a window here. So does Curtis Sleewood. They got to get together, I think, and figure out some sort of coalition race. That said, the other thing you'll see from the media all weekend long was Trump called him a communist. He's not really a communist. We showed this to you on the show on Friday, where they're actually fact-checking this. Is he a communist? No, he's not a communist. He's not. After all, communists want to control the means of production in an economy and a society. No, all he wants to do is raise taxes and give benefits and free bus rides. By the way, free bus rides in New York, let me tell you, those will be rolling homeless shelters. Think about it for a minute. Free bus rides for all is what he's promising. So you're a homeless dude. You haven't showered in a month. You're in your filth. You don't have a place to live. It's the winter. You get on a bus, you go into the back row, and you set up camp. What exactly is the legal rationale for making you get off the bus? Can you think of one? Cops come in, dude, you can't stay here. Why not? Buses are free. I'm just taking my free bus ride. You realize what kind of stinkhole New York is? I mean, even more so than it is right now. None of these things make sense. You know that. But no, he's not really a communist. He's not a communist because communists want to control means of production in a society. That's what you hear from these idiot elitists who always say, socialism's never really been tried. For some reason, every time a socialist government gets elected in, they end up being like Venezuela or Cuba or Nicaragua. The communists take over. Oh, poo-poo on the communists. We don't like them. They're the same people, including this guy. Post-millennial unearthed this video, which looks like really bad, like AI, but this is a legit video. This is him early in his political career. And what does he say here?
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists. And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production, where we do not have the same.
Yeah, I get terrified when I see a communist say something like the end goal of seizing the means of production with a smile on his face. I'm sure Lenin and Stalin smiled quite a bit when they were raising a gun up to the temple of their political enemies who resisted the idea of a government seizing the control means of production. He also threw BDS in there. Did you hear that? Listen real fast.
Socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right? Or whether it's the end goal of seizing the means of production.
He's so happy about that. BDS, by the way, is the intellectual left-wing college campus version of Hamas and wiping Israel off the planet. That all connects. It's all connected. This is Islamo-fascist Marxism. That's what it is. And that's who he is. He's such a fraud. But then you get over to Meet the Press, where Kristen Welker is doing her best to normalize him. I almost feel like during the commercial break, she's like, let me give you a few pointers. If you just soften the edges a little bit, You're going to be just fine. You're going to be able to win the election. But, just work with me. I'm trying to help you. I'm on your side. I don't want to lose my job when you take over. So she confronts him on the communism. Of course, she didn't have that video to show him and say, you just said that your end goal is to take over the means of production. So she asks, are you a communist?
Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has had.
By the way, I'm going to let this whole thing play out, but do you notice how it's all framed with Trump? Any objective human being looking at this guy, looking at his plans for grocery stores being taken over by the government, which we'll get to in a moment, free bus rides for everybody, defund the police, all of the giant socialist, communist ideas that he's trying to implement there by taxing the rich. There should be no more billionaires. We'll get to that in a moment. Anybody watching this play out before our very eyes with an understanding of 19th century politics and 20th century politics could reach the conclusion, wow, this guy sounds like a communist. The question can be asked in any way possible to be able to get the truth from this guy and confront him on his totalitarian economic ideas. But instead, she decides to frame it as Trump said something mean about you. Trump called you a communist. How do you respond? Instead of objectively measuring what he stands for, it has to be about something Trump tweeted. They're so bad at this. But that's what she did. We'll start it from the beginning.
Well, let me ask you about what Donald Trump, the president of the United States, has had to say. He's had a lot to say about your campaign. He called you a communist. Because he's the president, I want to give you a chance to respond directly to him. How do you respond? Are you a communist?
No, I am not. And I have already had to start to get used to the fact that the president will talk about how I look, how I sound, where I'm from, who I am, ultimately because he wants to distract from what I'm fighting for. And I'm fighting for the very working people that he ran a campaign to empower, that he has since then betrayed. And when we talk about my politics, I call myself a democratic socialist in many ways inspired by the words of Dr. King from decades ago, who said, call it democracy or call it democratic socialism. There has to be a better distribution of wealth for all of God's children in this country. And as income inequality has declined nationwide, it has increased in New York City. And ultimately, what we need is a city where every single person can thrive.
Again, I am chilled by this guy being so smooth with a smile on his face, explaining or sugarcoating with this rhetoric. But I shouldn't be. Actually, I shouldn't be chilled because this is Bernie Sanders meets AOC, meets some sort of a television creation of what Hollywood has come up with. And that's exactly what this is. And it is terrifying that people are going to vote for it. It's terrifying that people go for this. But they do. And it never ends well. You think about the wars that were fought to push back communism, from the Korean War to the Vietnam War, the tens of thousands of Americans' lives that were lost trying to fight communism on the other side of the planet. And now New Yorkers are about to vote for it and put it in office in the most important mayor's office in America. It is terrifying. But instead of framing this question, Trump called you a communist. Are you a communist? How about this? How about lay out every single one of his policies and say, explain to me how this isn't communist. Explain me how this isn't the government taking central control of basic fundamentals in an economy and a society. That's what communism is, and that's what you're proposing. This has nothing to do with what Trump put out on social media, but she opened up the door and let him say, I know he's making fun of what I look like and what my name is and where I come from. It's typical. But then Aaron Burnett over on CNN, boy, she bent over backwards to try to normalize this guy, especially the atrocious idea of government-run grocery stores in New York City.
City-run grocery stores, I proposed a pilot program of one store in each borough. These are 5 stores in total. The total cost of this is $60 million. This is less than half the cost of what the city is already set to spend on a subsidy program for corporate supermarkets that has no guarantee of cheaper prices or collective bargaining agreements or even accepting
So
SNAP
you're
or
not
WIC.
looking at some like Soviet Union
grocery stores on every corner that are going to be run by the government.
No, what I'm looking at is how to solve the very clear twin crises of affordability when you go to the grocery store and food deserts, which disproportionately impact Black and brown New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs.
She is, forgive me, a moron. But again, you saw her bending over. So you're not talking about a Soviet type grocery store on every corner. Honey, there were no Soviet grocery stores on every corner. Trust me, you had to walk miles in the snow. And if you had boots, you were lucky to get your toilet paper. Can we break this down, though, for a moment and expose the absurdity and the lies that he just spewed here? And, you know, if Erin Burnett were equipped with any kind of jaundiced perspective on the person that she's interviewing, we're constantly told that we need our media to speak truth to power and hold elected officials accountable. Where is she here? Is she holding him accountable? No, she's trying to help him win the election by saying, okay, so what everyone's afraid of, you're not going to do that, right? Here's what I would do if I were in her position.
City-run grocery stores, I've proposed a pilot program of 1 store in each borough. These are 5 stores in total. The total cost of this is $60 million.
Hold on. 5 stores, 1 in each borough. You know New York is a big place, right? So this whole thing is going to be $60 million, 1 store in each borough. That would be $12 million per store. That would be $1 million a month to run this city-owned grocery store, and it's only going to accommodate the neighborhood where there's 1 store each borough. How many miles do you have to go to get to this city-run grocery store in these so-called food deserts that you proclaim? $60 million, 5 stores, $12 million each, $1 million a month to run a grocery store. That's government efficiency for you. And what is it exactly you're going to accomplish?
This is less than half the cost of what the city is already set to spend on a subsidy program for corporate supermarkets that has no guarantee of cheaper prices or collective bargaining agreements or even accepting
So
SNAP
you're
or
not
WIC.
looking at some like Soviet Union grocery stores on every corner that are going to be run by the government.
No, what I'm looking at is how to solve the very clear twin crises of affordability when you go to the grocery store and food deserts, which disproportionately impact Black and brown New Yorkers across.
So in New York City, in each of the 5 boroughs, Manhattan, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Queens, and Staten Island, this guy is going to take $60 million, and I assure you it'll cost more than $60 million. There is not one government program like this that has ever come in on budget. It will cost more. Let's call it $100 million. He's going to take all that money, and he's going to set up 1 store, 1 in Manhattan, 1 in the Bronx, 1 in Queens, 1 in Brooklyn, 1 in Staten Island. And that's going to solve the affordability problem with grocery stores in New York City. And that's going to solve the problem of food deserts, so-called food deserts. By the way, you know why you have certain food deserts that affect Black and brown communities in cities like New York? Because the grocery stores that opened there in a city like New York had a whole lot of shoplifting going on. So they got extra security to try to stop people from robbing them. And they were told they weren't allowed to do that. In fact, the security guards couldn't intervene during shoplifting. And if the police actually arrested somebody for shoplifting, the district attorney, Alvin Bragg, who was put in place by George Soros, would let them off without actually convicting or even pressing charges against all the shoplifters. And then they go right back and steal more off of the shelves. So the grocery stores are like, screw it. We're not going to do this. They're robbing us blind. By the way, all that shoplifting that happens in New York is also a reason why prices are high, because they have to make up for the losses that they get in all of those communities. But he's going to solve it by having a government-run grocery store, 1 each in each borough that costs a minimum of $12 million each. And that'll solve it. That'll solve the problem, because communists always solve problems like that. And finally, when asked about his economic policies back with Kristen Welker on Meet the Press, he said something extraordinary about billionaires. Take a listen.
You are a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires because, frankly, it is so much money in a moment of such inequality. And ultimately, what we need more of is equality across our city and across our state and across our country. And I look forward to work with everyone, including billionaires, to make a city that is fairer for all of them.
Okay, thank you, Newsbusters, for the clip. Let's break this down real fast. This is the perfect Margaret Thatcher axiom, by the way, which is, income inequality. You see, they're upset that there is inequality. So here you've got billionaires, and then you've got people in America where, by every definition, the lowest income people in this country still have a better standard of living and life than people in any other country just about on this planet, okay, for the most part. But what angers them is the inequality. And so rather, you never hear these people talking about making the people on the lower end of the economic spectrum more prosperous and wealthier, where they will make better choices with their lives so that they can retain their money and actually raise their standard of living. They never have a plan for that. They talk about income inequality, and then their solution is to take money from the people up here. They never have a solution about how to better the life of the people down here so that they can actually make more, keep more, save more, and live a better life. No. Because God forbid these people make more money and then these people up here make more money. Because if everybody's making more money, that doesn't solve the inequality problem. See, all they care about is the gap because they can use it for political purposes. They can foment rage with this class warfare. Those people up there are making too much. So what does he say? There shouldn't be billionaires. Let me hear him say that again.
Or a self-described democratic socialist. Do you think that billionaires have a right to exist?
I don't think that we should have billionaires.
He says with a laugh, and I'm telling you, I know I keep saying it, but the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It's so chilling when he's laughing and smiling, and it's just, it's such a marketable product they've created with him. I don't think there should be any billionaires, silly. That's terrifying. That this man, wanting to grasp onto an enormous amount of government power as the mayor of New York City, is just chuckling at the fact that he doesn't think that certain people should exist because of the money they make. Here's an irony. Do you know where they're sitting having this interview? You know where they are, right? This is Meet the Press in New York City, right? Well, actually, wait, hold on. Are they in Washington? Because it looks like they're in New York. I think they're in New York. I know that the Capitol building is back there, but it looks like it's where is NBC News headquartered? Do you know? Do you know where NBC News headquarters is in New York City? Of course you do, because you watched the sitcom where NBC corporate is located. It's 30 Rock, right? 30 Rock. Do you know what 30 Rock is? It's Rockefeller Center. Rockefeller. It's a whole complex of buildings owned by Comcast NBC that was built by and named after Rockefeller. A few blocks up and to the west from Rockefeller Center is a place called Carnegie Hall in New York City. Ever heard of Carnegie Hall? Then there's the Guggenheim Art Museum. And then you've got Avery Fisher Hall, Koch Hall. You've got the Vivian Beaumont Theater. You've got I can name building after building after building, gallery after gallery after gallery, performing arts space after performing arts space, office building, iconic locations in New York City, all built by billionaires. Where would New York City be without billionaires? Half of their landmarks were created by billionaires. Half of the schools in university, Tisch School of the Arts at NYU. Half of the buildings at Columbia University. Half of the buildings at New York University. All named after philanthropist billionaires who made a ton of money because of the incredible freedoms in this nation, and then decided to create a foundation and an endowment for the arts, for museums, for history, for education. This guy doesn't think billionaires should exist. In New York. No pushback from Kristen Welker. Finally, here's Grandpa Bernie, so proud of his little butchnik there in New York, his little munchkin. He's such a bubbly, he's going to squeeze his cheeks. He said, look at you, little communist. You're doing such a great job. Bernie couldn't be prouder.
The Republican Party has not just become a right-wing extremist party. In many cases, it's become like a Stalinist party, a cult of the individual. And what the party is about now is that Trump says something, and if you have an independent thought, if you disagree with Mr. Trump, if you think maybe what he's proposing doesn't work for your constituents, you're out of here. You raise your voice, and in 5 minutes, they will be announcing a primary to your election. So what happened is Tillis thought that this was a bad piece of legislation for North Carolina. He's right, it was. And the result of that is Trump said, good, we're going to primary you. You have the same thing in the House, with the very few people who are prepared to disagree with Trump. So right now, the Republican Party people are just afraid to dissent. And all you have to do is say, I love President Trump. I will do anything and everything he says. Hey, that's what being a candidate in the Republican Party is today. Pretty pathetic.
So the guy who literally honeymooned in Moscow and celebrated the Stalinist Soviet Union, who champions the central government economy of any communist nation and wants to replicate it here, who is celebrating his brand new little socialist communist up in New York and AOC in Congress, he's calling Republicans Stalinists, which I guess by Bernie Sanders' measure is a compliment or something. He thinks Republicans are the ones who are Stalinists. All right, just good to know. Good to know where Bernie is right now with all of this, because they continue to lie and lie and lie and misrepresent and tell you they're one thing and call us the exact opposite of what we truly are. They always accuse you of being what they're guilty of. And in this case, it's being a Stalinist, literally. And they're going to keep this charade going right up until Election Day. And you better keep your eye on the ball here as we see what's really playing out here in the news and how the media is trying to help them out and cover up the facts. That's why we're here. And I'm glad you join us every single day. Thank you. Thanks for the show today, guys. That was fantastic. Sorry, I got a little choked up at the end. Thank you for that. Do we have any super chats there that we can celebrate? We do. Angela, Child of God. Angela, I like your new name. A $2 super chat. What will Democrats do in 2028 when TDS is over? I think they're going to continue it. They don't really stand for much other than opposing Trump. And I think that for the next couple of election cycles, they did this with Reagan, by the way. Everybody thinks that this is new with Trump. I assure you, they demonized Reagan just as much, and they tried to demonize candidates there, not knowing that the American people loved Ronald Reagan. They tried to tag people. Any economic policy that was in line with Reagan's phenomenal economic plans during the 80s when he was president was always termed as, oh, it's trickle-down Reaganomics. They did that for like 20 years after Reagan was off the scene. Trickle-down Reaganomics, trickle-down. So they find their monster. They find their demon. They run against that demon, even when that demon is fictionalized and doesn't exist, and they keep propping it up. So they're going to do the same thing. Oh, this is the Trump Republican Party, and they'll do this probably for another 20 years is the answer to your question, Angela. They'll never let it go. They don't have anything else. Another $2 super chat from Angela. Did USSR have government-run grocery stores? They sure did. They sure did. Everything was government run in the USSR. Don't you remember the bread lines and the toilet paper lines and the lack of any sort of basics? Yeah, that was the government run grocery stores. And Angela, you're very busy this morning. Thank you so much, sweetheart. $5 super chat. Democrats are stalling on the One Big Beautiful Bill because it makes citizens work and illegals leave. Social programs are a reason for inequality. Vote them out. Yeah, it is amazing that they keep saying, oh, all of these people are going to be kicked off Medicaid. These are literally people who can work and should work. These benefits are not supposed to be for people who just choose not to work. When COVID came by, there were a lot of people who were pushed out of work because of the government, because of Democrats in the government and Anthony Fauci, and their businesses were shut down. And in an emergency, during a state of emergency in this country, the government opened up Medicaid for people who were out of work because there were no jobs, because businesses were forced to close. Now Republicans, 5 years later, are saying, okay, the pandemic's over. Let's get Medicaid back to what it's supposed to be. And all the Democrats are saying and all the media is repeating is, oh, you're kicking people off of Medicaid. People are going to lose their health care. No, they're losing health care that they never were supposed to have in the first place. We're going back to where it's supposed to be. So, yes, thank you for that, Angela. You're right. And we have one more super chat over on Rumble. $6 from Arthur Brogdon. Hey, NYC, gooder and harder, squared. Gooder and harder. Hold on. I know that. I know gooder and harder. Damn it. His references are killing me. $10 from Arthur, and another $10 from Arthur Brogdon. You can vote your way into Democrat socialism, but you got to shoot your way out. Combat at 82nd Airborne in NCO Art. Infantry NCO Art. All right. Thank you. Wait, you're 82nd Airborne Infantry NCO? Or are you quoting somebody? Oh, maybe maybe that's a quote from somebody. Anyway, either way, I like it. Thank you, Arthur. I appreciate that. Oh, Art is short for Arthur. So, Arthur, thank you for your service. 82nd Airborne Infantry NCO. You rock, man. God bless you. Thank you for that, Arthur. And thank you all for watching today. For those of you who are longtime viewers of the program, and by long time, I mean, almost 2 years now, you see that we're in our Oklahoma studios for the next 2 weeks. This is our annual summer corporate retreat in Oklahoma, where we're continuing to work, but we're doing lots of meetings with our board of directors, and we're making for a better show and a better viewing experience for all of you, and maybe even, I'll say it, spin off some new shows here on the Larry channel. So thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy our it's a nice looking set, isn't it, Kevin?
Love it.
I like the wood panels. I like I got bookshelves on this side. Should we spin it around and have the bookshelves in the back? People love the bookshelf look.
Maybe when we hit a subscriber milestone.
Ooh, where are we at right now on subscribers? 550?
Yeah, almost 600,000.
All right, let's go. Guys, thanks for watching. We'll be back tomorrow. Same time, same place. In the meantime, my name's Larry O'Connor. You can call me Larry.